Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. I'd like to welcome you all to the 9th episode of the Qazwini Brothers podcast. For me, it feels like time's been flying. Half of Ramadan is already over, and the other half will, be done just as quickly. Happy Mother's Day to all our mothers. Whoever just joined us, please tell your mother you love them. Show them your appreciation. I know with the lockdown we can't go out and shop, buy things for her, but you could write a card or simply just share your favorite memory of your mother with her. Our moms just want, something to show appreciation. They're not asking for much. So may Allah bless all of our mothers and give them a long life. Today we're going to be talking about global injustice. Evil obviously exists in the world. It's unfortunate, but it's the sad truth. The strong and powerful prey on the weak, and usually innocent people are left in the crossfire.
Would you like me to start?
Yes.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Respected brothers and sisters, viewers, friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I would like to also congratulate all the mothers who are watching this show, and I would like to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all our mothers and to bless them, inshallah, with a long, healthy life. Ameen. Today's topic, unfortunately, is not the happiest of topics. We are speaking of a very important topic, however, and that is global injustice. And I believe that one of the reasons why we observe the month of Ramadan, while we fast, is to be able to think of the weak, their tribulations, their difficulties, what they have to go through on a daily basis. It is true that we must not eat or drink for several hours, many hours a day. However, at the time of iftar, mashallah, we are blessed to have many different kinds of food on the table. We're blessed to have clean water, electricity, safety, warm food around our family members. However, this is meant to remind us of those who do not have any food to eat or any water to drink, or they do not have the ability to sit next to their family members and enjoy some family time. Therefore, I feel in the midst of the month of Ramadan, this is the most important topic that needs to be addressed. This is the most important topic that needs to be talked about. And we need to create a lot of awareness when it comes to this specific issue. Therefore, everybody should feel responsible to be able to stand with the weak and against those who are involved in injustice, any form of injustice, especially global injustice. And that is the true role that a Muslim must play. While they enjoy freedom and while they enjoy everything else that they have in life, they must be charitable with that which Allah has given them. And that is a zakat. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to do zakat on everything that we have, and on all the blessings that He has given us and bestowed upon us. And the zakat of the safety and the freedom and the food that you have and the water that you drink is to stand with the rest of the people who don't.
Thank you, Sayyid. Today may not be one of the most entertaining or fun topics that we've talked about, but it's obviously our responsibility to shed light on what's going on around the world, although it may be the sad truth. Today we're going to be talking about a few things. First, we're going to talk about the Uyghur crisis in West China. We'll talk about the Rohingya crisis that had to do in Burma and Myanmar. We'll talk about the crisis in Yemen, the crisis in Kashmir. We'll talk about the U.S. border crisis. Then we'll transition and speak a little bit on the causes of global injustice. We'll talk about God's intervention. And at the end, we'll talk about how to try and achieve world peace. So, it's our responsibility to talk about these things, and I'd like to start off by talking about the crisis in West China with the Muslim Uyghurs. So in 2018, the United Nations estimated that over 1 million Muslims are being placed in internment camps and labor camps in West China. So basically the Chinese Communist Party rounded up all of these Muslims, put them in these prison camps, and they're labeling them as re-education camps, but there's been many reports of the inhumane brutality going on within those camps. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Definitely. When you're talking about global injustice and an injustice that has been forgotten for the most part, however, right. It's very sad and in fact very depressing to hear of and to know that such things are still going on around the world is what's going on in China. Mm-hmm. Like you said, those innocent Muslims. By the way, when I say innocent Muslims, there could be people that will say, well, no, they were accused of certain things, some terrorist activities. For example, in a railway station, many people were killed by certain people who claim to be Muslim. Obviously, we're not saying that every single person every single person in that community is somebody who is doing everything the right way.
Right.
However, what is the majority like? That's the question we should ask. Are the majority of those people law-abiding, mm-hmm. good citizens that didn't have anything to do with politics even? They just wanted to live their normal lives.
Right.
Go to work, go to the mosque, go home, be with their family, be able to worship freely. Mm-hmm. That's how the majority of those people were. Very innocent people.
Right.
Yes, maybe a minority of them made mistakes, but that should not reflect on the rest of the community of Muslims in China.
Right.
So, all those people that are now put in camps, in the, like you said, China refers to it as educational camps, but in fact they are brainwashing camps.
Right.
And I'll get to that, but 1 million people right now are in those prisons. Mm-hmm. And in those camps. And the criteria for them to choose those people and to put them in those camps is, they would go in somebody's home, and if they have a picture of the Kaaba or the Prophet's mosque, or they would have a prayer mat
right.
in their house, they would take those people and put them in those concentration camps.
Right.
I don't care whether you're Muslim or you're a Jew or a Christian or an atheist, for a matter of fact. If you hear of this and you're not saddened and you don't feel like you want to do something about this and, mm-hmm. and make sure that you stand in defense of innocent people, then there's something seriously wrong with that person or their mindset. They say that a lot of people thought that the people in the camps are extremist.
Right.
People like ISIS, terrorist people. But when they investigated, they realized they were very innocent people. And they were just, doing their daily activities, by going to the mosque or praying on daily basis. Or, for example, purchasing halal food.
Right.
Now, what's happening in the camps is the Communist Party has declared that their party and religion cannot really see eye to eye.
Right.
They cannot coexist. And therefore, they're trying to destroy the Islam within those people
basically take out that religious aspect of them, out of their identity,
Right.
and send them back into the society.
Yeah.
So not only those people don't have freedom of religion, but they're being forced to denounce their religion, to leave their religion. And a lot of them are being tortured. A lot of them are, I'm sure there are people who have lost their lives.
Definitely.
And, the stories that you hear of people who all their lives, they're eating halal, they're wearing hijab, they're Muslims, and the Chinese government has now forced them to, for example, drink.
Yeah. Eat pork, drink.
Eat pork.
Right. They're not allowed to fast. If they're caught fasting, they'll be punished, basically. Yeah. So they force them to break their fast.
The Chinese government has spent $8.5 billion on surveillance.
Right.
Of those people.
Yeah.
With facial recognitions, just to make sure that they know exactly where they go, exactly what they do, who they interact with. Yeah. They have forced them to have spying applications on their phones. So, right. If you're a Muslim, you have to have the spying app on your phone.
Right.
And you have to have it on all the time so the government knows exactly what you're doing, hears exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And, the average person of this community makes about $12 a month.
Wow. Extreme poverty.
So if you're spending 8.5 billion people...
Dollars.
If you're spending $8.5 billion on surveillance on this community, but you're giving them $12 a month, and they just happen to be in the richest area of China,
natural resources,
with all the natural resources, that's, I would say, great injustice.
Yeah.
And the reason why, and obviously there are other areas that we have to cover, and many people might ask, why is it that you only covered those 4 or 5 or 6 places?
Yeah.
Isn't there injustice in other parts of the world? Absolutely, there's injustice in many parts of the world.
Right.
However, I felt that those are the greatest parts, the greatest forms of injustice. Those are, this is the type of injustice that's going on around the world that people are not so aware of, or people are not being proactive on. And what happens is that Allah then is upset with everybody.
Right.
Because everybody's silent while such an injustice is taking place.
Mm-hmm.
We can, there are things that we can do that don't require much effort or time from us. Very peaceful ways to communicate the fact that we disagree with such things.
Right.
Regardless of those people who, whether they are Muslim or not, we have to voice our disagreement, and that is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires from the Muslim community. But why is it today, that the Muslim community is so silent?
Right.
Nobody's speaking out.
Especially in Muslim countries.
Especially in Muslim countries, or non-Muslim countries, but you would expect that the Muslim countries would say something, right? And they are all quiet, and they are all silent.
Some of them even said, it's justified. Certain countries that even house the Kaaba and the Prophet's Mosque, some of their officials said, you know what, whatever is happening in China, that's justified.
Yeah.
So that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I saw some documents on WikiLeaks that speak of how China is now buying out those people.
Mm-hmm.
It's buying their silence, basically.
Right.
And in the end of the day, we realize it's all about money.
Right.
And it's about money for those who have been silenced.
Mm-hmm.
It's about money for those who aren't saying anything, because they're afraid for their benefits.
Right.
And it's very sad. It's truly very sad and very depressing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what's going on with those people there, it's very heartbreaking. You know, some of them are forced into things that no human being should be forced to.
It's kind of like, you know, when we read about the Holocaust in camps like Auschwitz.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and I even read that some Christians are also being held in those internments. Not as much as Muslims,
yes,
but
absolutely.
if they do catch anyone basically practicing religion, they capture them and put them in these camps. So it's very inhumane, very unfortunate, violation of human rights. Makes me think of the next point we're going to talk about, you know, the Rohingya crisis. The UN President, Antonio Guterres, he called the Rohingya minority the most discriminated minority on earth. In 2017, we saw very inhumane brutality that occurred against them. Over 6,700 of them were basically genocided in Myanmar and Burma. Of those, over 800 of them were children under the age of 5. So this happened by Buddhist radicalists that went into these villages and burned them down, you know, sexually assaulted all the women, they killed all the men, they killed children. Many people were killed, and it was an act of genocide. Many people around the world were silent. It's still today in the UN, no resolution has been passed to call it a genocide. So let's talk about that now.
Yeah, the Rohingyans and what's going on with them and the suffering that they witnessed, and again, you know, mostly the Muslim community and the global community was very silent.
Right.
Very heartbreaking stories, very heartbreaking images.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in one report I read that over 220 villages were burnt down.
Right.
With everything in it.
Yeah.
You know, with the stock, with the people in there, with the livestock, literally just burned down.
Mm-hmm.
And it is unbelievable. You know, this army of Myanmar that's meant to protect their citizens, that's meant to ensure their safety and security, is now going to those villages and aiding the destruction of those villages, going against their own people.
Right.
And it is the greatest form of ethnic cleansing.
Right.
Basically, they don't want those guys to exist anymore. Mm-hmm. They want them gone.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a very famous woman that won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Right.
Aung
San Suu Kyi.
Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yeah.
Who obviously is a human rights activist.
Yeah.
And she was silent for a very long time. And when she spoke, she said something that was very disappointing.
Right.
She said, basically, she denied a lot of things that were happening, and then she said, well, 50% of Muslim villages are still safe.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That means what about the other 50%? The
Right.
other 50% that were destroyed? The other 50% that, you know, everybody in them was killed or burned or murdered and sexually assaulted.
Right.
How are you going to be okay with that? You know, as Muslims, we see those things and we ask ourselves, what have we done? What did we do in the past? What are we going to do in the future if situations like this come up? And fortunately, for the most part, I feel that we're content with our situation today. You know,
Right.
Yeah, you know, we wake up, we go to work, we drive our cars, and we're comfortable, and we eat the most safest of foods, and we have clean water, and we enjoy life, and our kids are and therefore we are silent because we're enjoying life, and we don't think about those who are in situations that are very bad. And I feel that, you know, for Muslims living in the West, those who can be proactive, those who can, for example, start having influence on their elected officials, on the media, on journalists. Please don't be silent when you see injustice.
Right.
The religion of Islam is a religion that has taught us, in fact, all religions, Christianity, Judaism, and I believe every single religion would stand against such injustice going on around the world. So once again, I would like to reaffirm that when you hear of such things, don't just say, well, this is very sad for them, but walk away from it without doing anything.
Yeah. Right now, we're basically approaching the 6th year of the war that has been waged in Yemen. So in 2014, Saudi Arabia and the UAE and many other countries began an unjust and gruesome war against the noble people of Yemen. It's estimated that over 100,000 civilians have been killed in this conflict, and 10 million people live in famine in Yemen. And that's just an estimate. I'm sure it's much more than that. And a lot of countries were complacent, still are complacent. Not a lot of people are speaking out and talking about the crisis that's going on in Yemen. So let's touch on that subject a bit.
The saddest story in the world right now, and the most unfortunate event in the world right now, is what's going on in Yemen.
Right.
It's the most heartbreaking event. However, it is also something that people are not talking about. People are silent. It's very unfortunate and it's very sad. I've seen people who rally about justice and freedom and liberty, and go after governments that have nothing to do with wars and crime.
Right.
But then they'll forget about this whole situation. In fact, to be honest, even the Muslim representatives that we spoke of a couple of days ago, we're praising their efforts. Have they called out the war on Yemen? What have they done? The other representatives that always speak of injustice, whether they are faithful Christians, are they speaking of the injustice that's going on in Yemen, or to say the least, they're just silent?
Right.
And obviously some of them, or most of them, are supportive because that's where the money is.
Right.
So the people of Yemen in 2011, just like any other Arab nation, began this Arab Spring movement. And they wanted to enjoy a better life. They overthrew a dictator. They were looking forward to having freedom and to be able to live like any other free nation. However, with the interventions of many countries interfering in their affairs, things got out of hand and things got out of control. And unfortunately today, you find that the situation of the Yemeni people is very heartbreaking.
Right.
20 million people are suffering in Yemen. 20 million people. That is a very
staggering number.
They have no schools. They have no hospitals. They have no clean water. Every report shows kids and animals and livestock drinking from the same water.
Right.
Dogs and mules and donkeys and cats and kids are all drinking from the same pond. And if there is no rain, then there is no water. And those kids are getting sick and they're getting ill and they're dying.
Right.
And nobody cares for them. Poverty, malnutrition, famine, illness, disease. and like I said, nobody's really doing anything about that.
Right.
And nobody even cares to give them importance. And you see people. I see people on social media. I don't know if this is intentional. They are aware of it, or maybe they're not. But they'll have pictures of the most insignificant things on their profiles, in their posts, and you don't see anything about Yemen or the people of Yemen or the kids and the children in Yemen and the fact that they have no schools and they have no hospitals. And
right.
They're literally suffering from every way possible. How is it that we've ignored them? How is it that we've forgotten about them? How is it that we're indifferent towards them? Yes, I personally can't get up and go to Yemen. It's not possible. But at least I can do something, I can make sure I'm reminding others, you have 100 followers, 500 followers, 1,000 followers. At least remind them once a month of those things that are going on around the world so that people are also aware and they're doing something about this.
Yeah. There's no way to justify what's going on in Yemen. It's a gruesome war. The best thing that would occur is if both sides were able to reach an agreement, if the state needs to separate, maybe, whatever is required for them to reach peace. But the biggest fact is that all foreign countries need to quit intervening within that country.
Yes, absolutely. When the war began, it was an American-backed war.
Right.
And for the most part...
Not just America, but U.S., Canada, UK.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, it was mostly a U.S.-backed war.
Right.
And at that time, Senator Bernie Sanders got up and he basically tried to stop this, and many other members of Congress and Senate, but the President Donald Trump vetoed that and continued his support to Saudi Arabia, who everybody, I don't think anybody around the world doubts the fact that they are the most terrifying nation. They are terrorists, they're brutal, they're murderers, they have, they're going on murdering their own people, spreading hate all around the world. They are the founders of the Wahhabi movement and the the extremist mindset and mentality.
Right.
So how is it possible that Western democratic states support them and fight their wars?
Right.
That's a very interesting discussion for another time. But in the end of the day, it's all about money.
Yeah.
It's all about dirty politics.
For sure. That's something that unfortunately we've seen for centuries, and if we don't act, it'll happen. It'll keep occurring. The crisis in Kashmir I heard about very recently, but when I learned about it, I saw that it's actually been going on for many, many years, and I haven't really known about it much. I just recently heard about it when India and Pakistan were, at a stance. They were almost going to go to war, There were fighter jets that were shot down by Pakistan, and India was conducting airstrikes within Pakistan. But I know that the people that are in the crosshairs are the civilians, the innocent people that live in Kashmir. They're getting hit the hardest. So let's talk a little bit about the crisis in Kashmir too.
Yeah, the crisis in Kashmir has been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
Very long time. And, obviously, the people of Kashmir are the ones that are paying for it.
Right.
They're paying a price that they should not have to pay. Why? Because they're stuck between India and Pakistan. And India and Pakistan have been fighting over this territory for a very long time.
Right.
India claims this belongs to us. Pakistan says no, it belongs to us. And there's wars going on between those two nuclear powers.
Right.
And who's paying the price? The people of Kashmir.
Mm-hmm.
Again, very innocent people. Yes, amongst innocent people, for example, this young man who detonated a bomb, I don't know exactly the date, but and killed Indian soldiers.
Right.
That was a terrorist, an act of terrorism.
Right.
He was from Kashmir. However, it does not mean that all Kashmiri people are terrorists,
right.
And they agree with this. But that same kid, I read in articles that he was humiliated by Indians. He was even shot in the leg once in a demonstration. The first time they caught him in a demonstration, they basically put his face on the ground and they were rubbing it on the ground with their feet, with their boots. The Indian soldiers. So there was a lot of aggression that was built inside this young man, and obviously he took away his life by detonating a bomb, which is very unfortunate. But it is an alarming event for Pakistan and India to be able to work together, to understand each other, to be able to create peace, so that such events don't occur,
right.
And innocent people don't die. Even the soldiers that were killed, obviously those people are innocent people. They're just doing their duty,
right?
And they're serving the Indian government. Anyhow, the politics between India and Pakistan is not something I want to get into. But what I want to say is, those people, the people of Kashmir, are stuck between this fight.
Yeah.
And a lot of their youth, they have dreams.
Right.
They have ambitions. They want a good future. They want a good future for themselves, and they're not being able to. They're not being able to live freely, and they're always scared. They're always afraid. To be caught in the midst of this fire, and it's not fair to them. It's not fair for all those people to be killed, for all those people to die,
Right.
for all those people to live in fear because two governments are not getting along.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the people of Kashmir are very good people, law-abiding people.
Yeah. They get along too, on either side of the.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This our next subject is something closer to home. Something that's going on within our country. We're going to talk about the U.S. Border crisis. So basically, what's been going on for years, not just right now, is people at the Mexican border have been illegally crossing into the United States. Undocumented immigrants cross into the United States illegally. They get imprisoned, they get deported. But after the current administration, there was a lot of more inhumane practices going on, like caging people, putting children in cages, separating families at the border, imprisoning people without a trial. So obviously there has to be a rule of law. If you do something illegal, then maybe you go to prison. But there is still humane ways to treat prisoners and, a due process to try people and indict them and send them to prison. So let's talk a little bit about the U.S. border crisis.
Yeah, obviously that's something that's happening here and now. The crisis is not just the U.S. border crisis. It's in forms of caging people or separating them from their families. I think that world leaders have all spoken against, for example, the wall, against this situation that has angered a lot of the American people as well. Americans do not agree with this. American people are loving, peaceful people. They're charitable people.
Right.
and they don't agree with this. However, the administration has made a decision, and I want to say that we shouldn't just look at things from one perspective and just say let's just leave our borders open, let anybody get in and out. That's
Right.
obviously not something that anybody would want. No Americans would agree to that. But when it comes to the undocumented community of people who live in America, a lot of them have children who were born in America.
Right.
And, in the end of the day, separating families like that is heartbreaking.
Right.
Separating a U.S. citizen child that was born in America from their parents, putting them in cages and prisons,
Mm-hmm.
is not what America's all about, and a lot of those other guys that are getting to Mexico illegally and then trying to cross the border from Mexico into the United States from Central America, South America. I mean, look at what's going on in their countries. They have
Right.
miserable countries. They're running away because they're afraid for their lives. It's not that they're showing up here and putting their lives at risk to get to the United States.
Right.
Because they just feel like they want to go to Disneyland or Hollywood Boulevard. No, that's not the case. They are afraid for their lives. They come from very troublesome situations in their countries, and obviously, the whole situation with refugees, they should be given a chance
Right.
to be able to live freely with dignity, and if the United States can welcome them and can embrace them, and then that is an act of charity. That's something that is beautiful.
Yeah. So talking about all this injustice that happens around the world, I've heard this question being raised a lot of times. So people say, why does Allah allow for these things to happen? How come? Where's Allah's intervention in global injustice, basically?
Yeah, this is a question that has been asked since the inception of religion, I would say, from the time of Adam until now.
Right.
It's a question that people ask while there's global pandemics going on, while there's wars, while there's famine, while there's illnesses. People ask, a child can ask, why is it that my father is the one who's ill?
Mm-hmm.
Where's God?
Right.
In this whole scenario, why did he not cure my father? Does he not know that I need my father? Or an orphan that has lost both his parents
Right.
would ask, where is God? If God existed, then why is it that I lost both my parents?
Right.
Or you would have, on a bigger scale, when you see, for example, something like what's going on now with this whole COVID-19 coronavirus is,
Right.
how come God just doesn't stop this? Doesn't he not love his creation? Aren't people dying? Why did he allow this virus to take over the world? So God's intervention, why isn't God intervening? And if he does not, then does he really exist? And if he exists, then is he a just, loving God, like we describe him to be? And that is an important discussion. However, it's a very lengthy one. But I will touch upon several explanations given by scholars and by philosophers and by religious leaders, the imams, the prophets, the Quran, to answer this very important question. Number one is, you see, sometimes we find a small form of bad or evil,
Right.
then it removes, it repels a much greater one.
Right.
For example, you've all seen that, for diabetics, sometimes they have to amputate one of their limbs.
Right.
Mostly it's, their toes, because the blood gets thin in their veins, and
Right.
it causes clots. So basically, they have to amputate, their toes, or sometimes their feet.
Right.
And if you were to go to a surgery room and here's a physician, a surgeon trying to amputate this person's limb, his feet, or his toes, then you see that as an evil act. Why would you do that to someone?
Right.
But once you understand that this small evil, this small bad thing is going to eliminate something much greater, it's going to eliminate this person losing his sight or losing his life,
right,
or losing his entire leg, then you realize it is something that
is needed.
And sometimes that is the case for many of the things that we see around the world, where we feel God does not intervene. If you send your kids to a private school, for example, and you spend about $5,000 to $10,000 a year on your kids, some private schools $30,000 to $40,000 a year.
Right.
That is not something people like. People don't just want to go out there and spend $10,000 on their kids' education. That is something not desirable.
Right.
However, it eliminates something much worse, and that is for a kid to grow up without education, without discipline, then not having a future. And I remember I shared the story a couple of days ago. I'll share it again for the guy that wanted to put his son into the school in the village. So he went to the village scholar and he said to him, "I want you to teach my son." He said it cost you 30 dinars.
Right.
And this guy, he told him, with 30 dinars I can buy a mule. And obviously a mule, was, helping out, obviously creating revenue and making money for them.
Right.
So the teacher said you have two options. You can either educate your son, or you will have 3 mules. The one that you have now, the one that you will buy, and your son.
Right.
Because, he wanted to basically let him know that, if you don't give education to your kids, that's what they'll grow up to be.
Yeah.
So, you have to spend in order to get. And that is something that, applies to a lot of things that we see. Now, there was a child, his name was Ilam, the refugee who drowned in the water, the 3-year-old that, his father was carrying him and he was drowned and he died. And I remember when I saw this picture for many days, I couldn't even eat or sleep, or it was the saddest thing. I felt like this world, this entire race of this entire kind of people, the humankind, has really gone to the lowest of the low, where all those people are suffering and they're dying and they're drowning in the ocean and nobody cares, and especially Muslim countries, nobody opened their doors for them. So this was an evil, but it saved a much greater evil. Yes, nobody was happy that this child died, but that created a desire within the European nations to open up their doors and to start accepting the refugees.
Right.
So millions of refugees could have died, but that was eliminated by this particular incident. And for example, Angela Merkel was the one that said, millions of people ended up in Europe, right?
Right.
And she was the one that said history will remember that the Christian land gave amnesty and protection to Muslims.
Right.
While they were fleeing their countries, and then for example, Saudi Arabia said if they end up in Germany, we'll build them mosques. I think
not a good idea.
Not
Saudi Arabia's mosques.
I think we can all agree that that is
counterproductive.
That is very counterproductive, and they don't need mosques.
Yeah, definitely not Saudi Arabia.
They don't need. They need shelter, they need food, they need homes, they need housing, they need education, they need, and they don't need mosques.
Yeah.
In fact, there are so many mosques in the Muslim countries. Why didn't those mosques create this desire within the people to accept those refugees, to get them out of their miseries? It's because when mosques are separated from humanity, from the basic tenets of Islam, and they're turning into places of rituals, then they no longer will serve the purpose that they ought to serve. And anyhow, so the one reason is, something small happens, but it eliminates something much bigger, and we may never know about that much bigger thing. But and sometimes we will, later. Another explanation is that God Himself does not create any evil, whether small or big, whether it's it's a smaller evil or a bigger evil. Right. It's all the creation of human beings. We are the ones that create evil,
right?
And we are responsible for that evil. The virus that spread in the world today, is God responsible for this virus? Did He create this virus? Did He spread the virus? Absolutely not. And I am puzzled, I am baffled when I see that some people are trying to blame this on God,
right?
While God says, this is what you got to eat, this is what you stay away from, this is how you're supposed to act, and at the end of the day we break all those rules, and then we end up blaming God, for our mistakes. And that is the case in many of the times. You see, for example, children that are born with illnesses, and you realize that one of the reasons could be that the mother or the father was either smoking or doing drugs or
right.
consuming alcohol, and all those things that are forbidden by religion, they're doing them, and then they blame God for their own mistakes. And the rest of the things. Number 3 is that sometimes we see certain things as bad, but they're not actually bad. They're actually good, but in the long run, they will turn to be something good. As we look at them today, they don't appear to be good, but in the long run, they will turn into something good that all of humanity can enjoy. And if you look at this global injustice, I don't think that in any given moment we can blame God for it.
Right.
In fact, if anything, God is the one that calls for people to act with peace
and seek
justice towards each other, and not go around engaging in wars and killing. And I think that is the message of all major religions, not just the religion of Islam. All religions, all religious people would tell you that we are not for all this global injustice. However, those who have hijacked religions,
right,
those who in the name of a religion they're doing terrorist acts, they're a completely different situation. And that is why there will always be a minority of Muslims, a minority of Christians, a minority of Jews, a minority of Buddhists,
right,
a minority of Hindus will be people who will hijack their religion. And they have, and I, obviously everybody knows those examples of people who have hijacked their religions and done terrorist activities in the name of their gods or their religions.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, religion protects us. Religion
right.
and God is meant to create peace amongst people in His creation.
Yeah, thinking of religious figures that basically tried to achieve peace, especially recently, I know Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani, one of the grand jurists in the Shia faith, he during the invasion of ISIS in Iraq, I remember he gave a grand fatwa or an edict that all able men should go and defend themselves against ISIS and eradicate ISIS to try and basically achieve peace. What other examples of religious figures can you think of that were basically catalysts towards achieving world peace?
Well, I think it's this topic is the topic of achieving global peace is very important.
Right.
However, it's a very broad topic, right?
Right.
You can achieve global peace in many ways. However, I think one of the most effective ways, one of the most a way that is achievable and it is convenient and it plays a role in the lives of all religious people is the religious involvement in achieving global peace. And you see that happening when world religions and world leaders come together and understanding to create peace amongst themselves. Religion could either be the cause for destruction and hate and violence and war, or it could be the cause to peace.
Right.
And like you said, say the Sistani in Iraq, according to all sides, whether they're the Shia, the Shia Muslims or non-Muslims or Western analysts, he played a very important role to save many lives in Iraq because he was able to tell the Iraqi people that religion and religious figures and the Holy Quran is meant to create safety, brotherhood, peace amongst the Iraqi people. Similarly, we see Pope Francis. He's done a marvelous job. He's done an amazing job in creating world peace.
Right.
People like Mother Teresa and other religious leaders that have done their part in interfaith dialogue and creating peace globally. That is why I believe in interfaith dialogue. I think that every center, every community, every mosque, every religious group should most definitely be involved in interfaith dialogue. And that is something that the Quran calls for, and I think it plays a role, even if it's in a small city, and then it grows to be a larger, to a larger part of your city, and then your state and your country, and then globally. That's how we'll be able to achieve peace. I think religion can play a very important role in that.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for the insight today. I'd like to thank all of our viewers. Thank you so much for supporting us, for giving your positive feedback, for keeping us, in your du'as. I hope you all are praying for us during Ramadan.